What we're going to talk about is just universal, that you can apply, and I think it goes right with what John was saying, we're going to focus a little bit more on business, but the things that I want to talk about, we can apply universally to your relationships, your marriage, whether you're single, whether you are a parent, fitness, all the different things. I think you can take what the general ideas that I'm going to talk to you about, and we can apply them. So as Lynn was saying, I've been in your shoes. My brother and I started a company from scratch back in 1994. It'll be 30 years old. And I say it's our company. I no longer own it, but I still refer to it as mine. So I sold out of it a few years ago when I went to end up teaching theology at a local school over in Jackson, where I'm from. But we started a company from scratch. So we clawed, we scratched, we had to figure things out. And then we were put in the role of wearing every hat. And so then we had to hire people. And every once in a while you had to let someone go, not very often. And then I also, as I mentioned, went into the teaching world. So I was a true employee. In fact is, the first week I was teaching, we had one of our sons was going to Michigan Tech. So I had to take a day off. And I'm like, I'm going to take that Friday off. And the people were like, oh, well, did you get permission? And I said, I haven't asked permission for a day off in 25 years. No, I didn't get permission. I didn't fill out a form. So that was a whole new environment for me, because when you ran your own company, if you needed a day off, you took a day off to go do something, and then you just made up for it later. So I've been in your shoes, and I think I can relate to a lot of the things that you guys go through. So perhaps that is your business right here, the cage. I know when you're starting a company, when you're running a company, it can be very all-encompassing, right? It's one of those things that just totally involves everything that you're doing. And so it never turns off. It's 24 hours a day, it's 7 days a week, and you have to find ways to turn it off. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about to begin with is to be like the birds, right? First thing we have to do is and John mentioned this, right? You have to retreat. That's where you do all of your brainstorming, your planning, your vision, is you have to take time to retreat. And again, this is more of a business sense, but it can be spiritual, and a number of other things can be very positive. You can use these same ideas for all of those different types of things. So as far as the retreat goes, this is the way my brother and I built our company. We retreated before we even had a company. We were doing these things for 3 years. We were retreating about what we wanted to build and how we wanted it to look, and you can judge whether or not it actually worked out for us. So maybe this is the way your business is. Maybe sometimes it's like, yeah, we're at the high, and then, boy, by lunch, what happened? And you're at the low. Or maybe this is you, right? It's just a swirl. Or I bet you every single one of you has one of these days where it's like, it doesn't even feel like there's a track. We are upside down, and we're just flying, and we're not sure what has happened. So from that standpoint, what we want to do is we want to look at some retreat rules. Okay. The first retreat rule is that you got to be off-site. Make sure that you go off-site. And when my brother and I first started the company, that could be as simple as going to his house and sitting out and grilling in his backyard. We just needed to be away from the office, because I didn't bring my phone up here, but whoever said that those little phones make your life easier, lied, right? They should be drawn and quartered, because if you have internet access, you are constantly in contact with your company, which can help with some things, but can be very detrimental as well. So when we would retreat, we would always go off-site. And we would make sure that the other thing that we would do is we would say, we want to brainstorm. We'll talk more about that in just a second. But we want to record what we're talking about. But if you have internet access, and as soon as that phone dings, or as soon as you see the little message that you got an email, you're sucked back into it. We were meeting with a consultant at one point in time, and he said, I want you to do red days, yellow days, blue days, and green days. Red, you're like crazy. Things are just incredibly busy and hectic. And then yellow's not quite as bad. And then I got all the way to blue. And he said, blue is a day where you actually have no interaction with your office. It's like it doesn't exist. And he said, how many of those days do you have? He says, that means you don't look at the email once. Because as soon as you look at an email, you're working. So he says, you have to have those days. And where do you get that? You get that right out of Scripture, right? When you read Scripture all the time, I mean, I think Jesus was pretty busy. And everyone's clamoring for his attention and his teaching and his healing. And you constantly read, well, he went off into the mountains to pray. Well, overnight, he just spent the whole night in prayer. Even when the disciples, came back, they tried to get away for a little bit of time. Didn't work, but they tried to get away. So have a way to record things that doesn't have internet access. And the other thing, and we stole this from Disney, back when Disney was a little bit more of a family company, but they had Dreamineers, right? What they used to tell their people for their whether they were making a movie or whether they were actually doing rides at one of their theme parks, we just want you to dream it. Don't worry about parameters. Don't worry about if it can work in the natural world and with the laws of physics. Don't worry about what the cost is. Just write down what you're thinking, and then we'll sort through it after that. And so that's really what you're doing when you're looking at the retreat, is you're dreaming without parameters, without guidelines, without worries about costs. You're just brainstorming. And then you're going to record it down, and you do that off-site. Now, I could go in and say, okay, what I want to do is I want to go, to a business Harvard Review, periodic journal, to try to prove that this is actually scientifically right on track. But I found a better source. It is a doctor that approved it. But what's fascinating about this, as funny as it is the last sentence. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose. Now, you got to think about that. I have looked, because I ended up with a degree in theological studies and taught theology in school. So I've looked at the Greek, the Hebrew, the Latin, the Aramaic. I've never found the word retirement in the Bible. So what that means is you always have a blank slate in front of you. Because God always uses you. Abraham was 100 when he had Isaac. Moses was about 80 when he was tapped on the shoulder and said, hey, go get my people out of Egypt. So when you look at this, where are you steering yourself? Where's the next step you're going to take? Is it going to go on this path, or is it going to go on this path? And even at my age, in the sort of more of the twilight, if you will, I'm 57. But I looked up online, right? The average age expectancy in Michigan is 78. So I have 21 more years on average than I'm going to be here. Where am I going to steer the ship? And what does that look like? And so that's what you're constantly doing. So we want to look at 3 ways. And these, I went again to this great guy named Jesus and said, how did he do things? How did he manage his ministry? How did he manage people? How did he lead? He asked questions. That's how he did everything. And anyone that's in sales knows that that person that asks the questions controls the conversation. So what my brother and I did is we asked this. There's the first question. There's your retreat question. What if? When's the last time you asked that about your business? Outside the box. What if? Well, we've always done it that way. Those are the worst words you can ever hear. My niece came in to fill my role when I left the company in sort of the human resources, because I did a whole lot of things in the back office. And she said, I want to meet with you and learn how you did these things. I'm like, oh, no, you don't. Because as most of you know that are business owners, you end up wearing I got the human resources hat and I got the technology hat. I don't even know what I'm doing. So I just figured out a way that worked for me to get it done. Is it the best way? Oh, heck no, probably not. You find a way that's going to work for you. You can take some of what I've done, but just ask what if. And we're going to get a little bit more into how that worked for my brother and I here in just a second. Next one, why not? Right? What if we did this? Why not? And there could be some reasons why. And then the third one is, yeah, but. Now, what's interesting is these are principles that you have in your business that you can ask. These are your employees as well. These are people. Who are the what-ifers in your company? The what-ifers are your visionaries. So I use a little bit of, for those of you, I was having a conversation with Jason and Jeffrey, and I said, are you familiar with EOS? Okay, so EOS, all right, I just have some friends that work with EOS. We were doing EOS before EOS existed, didn't even know it. Because my brother was more visionary, I was more integrator. So a what-ifer is a visionary. That's probably the owner of the company, but maybe it's a head of a department, maybe it's the marketing person. They're just creative. Now, every one of these people has a benefit to them, or benefits to them, and they have, I don't call them weaknesses, they're limitations. So what are the benefits of a what-ifer? They're going to be dreaming. They fly at 100,000 feet. They see landscape. They see trends. They see what the competition is doing. They see where they want the company to go. So that they'll have 200 ideas between the start of the day and lunch, and another 200 ideas between lunch and the end of the day. So they are constantly just floating with this is what I want to happen. And so with that, what's the limitation? Right? The limitation is that they are not detail people. Don't give them, and they fly at 100,000 feet, they can't see the ground. So they're not the person that's going to do the forms or do any of the details work or anything like that. But that's the what if person. Who's the why not person? The why not are the soldiers in your company that you need, the people that just get right on board, the people that are like, what wall do you want me to go through? That's a great idea. How do we do it? They're motivated, they're inspired, they bring everybody along with them. So what's the limitation for them? Limitation for them is they can be yes people, right? The what-ifers don't like to necessarily acknowledge that not every idea they have is great. And so with that in mind, the why-notters are just always on board. And so it's great, but at the same time, you have to just understand we need those people, but they're always going to agree with everything. So then you get the yeah, but. That was me. That was the integrator. That's the person we used to say my brother was like a bald eagle flying way up in the sky, and I was like a kiwi in the deep grass, because it was all logistics and practicality. And so with that in mind, a yeah, but is like, okay, you provide some conservative, it's like my brother was on a hot air balloon flying up into the sky, and I was grabbing the tethered rope. I was like, that idea is dumb. We're not doing that. That idea, that's pretty good. How about if we take this one and this one? But the thing that he never sees is how it's going to impact 5 different departments. That was me, because he doesn't see the detail. And so you need this combination, but as you're retreating, hopefully on your leadership team, you have that combination. We just naturally had it as brothers. And then we brought in some other people that could also help us fill in some of those gaps. And so when you're on a retreat, when you're asking questions, that's what you're doing, and that's how the people fill in those roles. So if you're a visual person, it would look something like that, right? General ideas, brainstorm. At the top, you funnel down into the why not, you funnel down into the yeah, but, business vision and business structure, okay? All right, so what we're going to look at are these 5 areas very briefly, and we're going to run them through this. So the first one is the business structure, the vision. All right. So let me take you back to 1991. So we got our start in the insurance industry. Or that was my dad, was an insurance person. Okay. So that was what we were used to, was the insurance. And we would go to these company conferences up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And yeah, they were 4 or 5 days. Anyways, there were things always happening at night. My brother and I never wanted to do that. So what we would do is we'd go off to the Twins game, buy some nosebleed tickets, get some ballpark food, and we would just sit and we would just what if. Didn't even have a company. He was still in college. What if we did this? What if we did that? And that's how we planned our vision. So what did we want? There were 5 main things that we wanted as a vision for a business that didn't exist, right? We wanted to have a very familial type of organization with our clients. We didn't want to be the biggest. We didn't want to have 200 reps in 20 different locations. That wasn't our goal. That wasn't our vision. We wanted to have something that was in our community that could take care of these group of people that came to us, but they were like family to us. So that was number one. Number two, we wanted to take care of our employees. We wanted employees that were going to be with us so we didn't have constant turnover. We wanted to build a culture that people came to work and they stayed there. The next thing we did is we wanted to provide a good livelihood for ourselves. Fourth thing we wanted to do was get involved in the company, in the community. And then the fifth thing we wanted to do is we wanted to build the company so that we didn't have to be there 30 years down the road, where they didn't rely on him and I. We actually built a company that didn't rely on us, which sounds weird, but that was what our vision was. So that was the vision. So then we have to put it together on the runway, right, and the details of this. So the first thing I would tell you is this. Now, these are the questions you're going to ask yourself and your company when you guys plan. So in the insurance industry, you always did all of your work in the evening. That was what our experience was. And I'm sure there were people that didn't do that, but this was our experience. So we were very radical. What if we actually had a professional office like an accountant, a lawyer? How many dentists go out and make house calls at 7:30 at night to send us, to do something at the kitchen table? That was what the insurance people did that we knew. We're like, well, we don't want to do that. We're going to build a company that actually they come to our office during business hours. That's radical. In 1992, 3, 4, when we started the company, because it wasn't what we were used to. So he said, let's build a professional office. The other thing is, what if we had departments? Because invariably in the insurance world that we were used to, they were cheap. They didn't want to pay any people to do anything, so they were going to handle all office work themselves. We're like, well, we're not doing that. Number one, it would have been me, because my brother's not going to do any of the detail, and I don't really care for forms myself. So it was like, well, let's develop these different departments. So you can ask yourself and your company, what if we did, what's radical in your industry? Have you sat and just brainstormed that with leadership? What would be something radical that you can look at and say, yeah, no one else does that. Can we do that? What if? Why not? Yeah, but is what you're doing. Relationship-oriented. This is a great marketing tool as well, right? So what we did is, in a nutshell, we had people that would come into our office, and come into our seminar, and we would meet with them for basically 4 or 5 times. 15 to 20 hours we would spend with them before they actually did any business with us, which in the sales world is like, especially in the investment world, is like, that's crazy. But it's like, well, that's what we want to do. So we could invest 20 hours with someone and they would never do, and that happened. But we built great relationships with the people that came to us. Because one of the things we always looked at is it's so hard to get someone in your front door. Why would you ever let them go out your back door that easily? So the industry average back in those days was around 94% retention. Ours was over 99%. So we wanted to have that relationship, but that was going to be a lot of labor. One of the things that we did, have you done this with your customers? When they come into you, if they're a new person, when they come into you, have you asked them why they came to you? How come they didn't go to your competitor? Because there's your marketing right there. So for us, we heard all the time, well, no one gives us any service. Now, I don't know if that's true or not for the places that were in our community, but to these people it was. So then what do? Well, we're going to develop all of our marketing so that it's relationship-oriented. So we're going to provide, every 90 days, we're going to do a portfolio review with all of our people, either in person or online. That was a great way for us to market. And we just build our company based off of what people were telling us when they came to us is, why did you come here? So have you done that in your company? That could be something that's very good. And then technology was always very important to us. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to have technology. And for a small firm, we spent an enormous amount of money on we had a CRM that was off the charts. Because why? Because we have to stay in touch with people. Now, that was snail mail back in 1994. We were mailing out thousands of paper letters and envelopes. So we had to do all that, but that was okay because it was a way for us to stay in touch with people. The adage that we had through this CRM was, unless you died or became a jerk, you were going to get mail from us. And so some passed away and some we decided to take off because that's the beauty of being your own boss. You don't have to work with people you don't want to work with. And so that's what we did. We make sure we hired the people in that we want to work with as employees. We make sure clients, whether they got a lot of money or not, you're not worth it. And we would get rid of them. And that was a lot of times what we did with to help our staff. So technology was always important. We were ready for COVID before COVID was even a recognized word. In 2008, 9, 10, we were remote. We could do everything remote. It was built so that employees didn't have to be in the office if necessary. So everything we did was based on technology so that we could stay. That was important to us. So your holes are your opportunities. So we noticed that there was, and this was 94 and before, that there was not a lot of financial literacy. So what we did is we looked and I said, okay, well, we went to the same high school. Was there a financial literacy? And I'm not talking like economics and accounting. I'm talking like, how do you write a check? I'm talking, what is debt? How do you get a house? How do you rent an apartment? How do you manage your debt? What's a credit score? I mean, everything. The government spends over $2 billion on STEM, which affects 9% of the high school population. They spend less than $130 million on financial literacy, which affects 100% of the high school population. Everybody's got to come out and manage money in some way. So we noticed that there wasn't this. My brother went to community college, then he graduated in business from Michigan State University. I went to the University of Michigan. And we got together and we said, did you ever have a class that taught you how to manage money? What was a stock, bond, mutual funds? No. Nothing. Didn't exist. Okay, well, that's a great marketing. That's a hole. So we found a seminar that could do that. So again, you're asking yourself, where are there holes in your industry? Where are there things that people aren't doing? And it's cyclical. So even though it may be provided right now or maybe 5 years ago, is it still provided today? So you're constantly looking at that. I mentioned the service of doing those types of providing that portfolio review, providing events for people. We were doing things that we enjoyed that allowed that to happen. And then for us, the boomers were just, in the 90s, that was the group that was getting ready to retire. They were coming into that phase, so that made sense to us. So again, you're looking at your business and saying, where's the market going? What are the trends? Where are your people? What's their age? What's their situation, et cetera? And so that's how we did what if, why not, and yeah, but in this area. So when we were looking at, so we got the financial educational seminar, totally educational, because that fit our personality. We're very low-key individuals. And then we would do events and have referrals. And that was the whole key. And I will tell you, we have people that still get invited to events today. It will be 30 years old on Labor Day of this year, of 24. And we still have people that come to our events that have never done a lick of business with us. But that's fine, because they still bring people with them, and they still say, we like what you do, but a lot of times they're a do-it-yourselfer. They're like, we like to do it ourselves. We like to manage our own money. Okay, that's great. But do you have friends that don't? So come to an event and bring some friends with you, and they do. And so that still works for us, which is really wonderful. And again, these will cycle every about 5 years is what we found. So as we were doing financial seminars, what we found is we started them in 95. And by probably 97, it was amazing that there were a number of other wealth management firms that were doing financial seminars because they're going to copy what's working, and it was working for us. And so eventually we were spending twice as much money to get half as many people there. So we thought, all right, we need to switch gears. What do we want to do? What if we're constantly, at least once a year, but probably twice a year, we're having those retreats? Where are we going to go next? What do we want to do? Okay, well, we like Broadway shows. So we were based in Jackson, and the Wharton Center was up in Michigan State, and a nice performance hall. So it was like, oh, we're going to buy Broadway tickets, and we're going to take people to that and take them to the dinner. Okay, that lasted a year or two. Didn't do exactly what we wanted it to do. We like sports. All right, we're going to get a suite at the Lugnut Stadium, which is the Class A, minor league baseball affiliate up in Lansing. All right, we're going to take people to the baseball game now. So we just constantly did things that we enjoyed, but you're constant. And then we came back to financial literacy seminars several years later, because it's just you're gonna be able to cycle through a lot of these things. So the most significant part, probably the greatest thing that that I think we did is we built a culture. So we've been around, as I mentioned, almost 30 years. In 30 years, we've had 4 people that have left our company outside of retirement. 2 just didn't fit, as it turned out, so we had to let them go. 1 decided to go on their own, and I was the 4th one that left. So in 30 years, that's our turnover. So on average, it's like 15, 20 plus years, 25 years. Because my brother and I ran it by ourselves for quite a long time because we were starting from scratch. So everything is built for the team. And that was the way, because everything is based on the employees. How many times do you really engage with the people that come in your front door or call your phone? And so for us, it was like we built it so that we didn't have to do that. Again, one of the things of being a professional office, when's the last time you called your doctor and you actually talked to your doctor? Because they don't design it to be that way. So for us, we were always available. Anytime someone had a major problem, oh, absolutely. Meeting, sit down, phone call, whatever, we're available. But you didn't hire us to do an address change and a beneficiary change and ask this or that or do this. That is not what we're for. So we wanted to build that professional office and have us train our people to go to the team, go to the service person, go to the new business person. And so everything was built to make sure our team could succeed. So they had all the technology. So the office that they're in right now, they actually built it. We built 2 living rooms because they totally remodeled a building. And the living rooms are couches. They have blankets. They got pillows. They got little laptop holders. Everything is laptop-based, which, again, this is not a big deal now, and it's maybe not a big deal if you're at a large company, but for a company that's got 14 employees, that's a big deal. So everybody had cell phones that could go to their desk. So they could be anywhere in our office. We had a sun deck on top. So they could go outside on a nice day, and they could sit outside and work the entire day out on the sun deck if they wanted to. We had a little treadmill that went 2 miles an hour. They could plug their thing into if they wanted to walk after lunch, and they could work while they were walking on the treadmill. So everything was designed. We had the desks that could raise and lower. And again, my wife works at Whirlpool. Not a big deal. Oh, of course we got that. Well, for a company like us, that was a big investment. But we want them to be able to stand up or sit down. So we were trying to build everything for the team, and we empowered them. So one of the things you can also think about that we were able to do is we empowered everyone in the company. We had an accountant, a florist, and everyone had the ability to call that florist and order something. So let's say Jeffrey calls me up and says, hey, I can't make the meeting today. My dog died, or my basement flooded. Oh, that's too bad, Jeffrey. So they talk to our receptionist, right, which isn't exactly what we call her, but I'll get to that in a minute. And the receptionist then calls the florist, says, hey, I need this arrangement sent to this address with this note. And then she does a note, hey, so sorry to hear about, and we would know the dog's name because we know the people. So sorry to hear that Boomer died, and I know how attached you were to him, and, here's a thought from us, and, love Richmond Brothers. So we would empower them to get involved in the lives of the people that we were with. And then when we did hire, my brother and I actually did, we were involved early on, but as the company got a little bit bigger, if they're going to work with this set of people, that set of people did the hiring. Because it's like they got to work with you, not necessarily me per se. So do they fit the culture first, and then can they do the job? And so that's what we did. Now, in that line of be open and have fun as well, so I got to tell you a quick story. So we had a consultant come in. We were always big on consultants, always bringing people in to help us out, help us to see things that we can't see. So give you an example. My mom came to us at one point. At one point, we had my mom and dad work for us. They were divorced. That was fun. We had an aunt. We had another lady that worked for us for 20 years. So when my mom first came to us, she just needed a job that could provide a little income. So we put her in data input, right? So she's just typing stuff in the computer for us. We have a consultant come in, and the consultant sits down, visits everyone in the company. He's there all week. And then he sits with my brother and I, and he says, hey, now we're all talking together. And he's like, can I be honest with you? And of course you're like, well, yeah, that's why we brought you in. Of course you can be honest with us. He's like, you guys are idiots. And Well, okay, well, I can accept that. I've been called worse. Why is that? He's like, why do you have your mom and data input? She has got to be the face of your organization. She's got to be out front. She is a people person by and large. And of course we knew that as our mom. But somehow we just didn't see it. And of course I was like, well, I always thought that, but my brother here, he didn't understand that. So both of us were pointing fingers at each other. I was like, oh my gosh, how did we miss that one? So who in your company, are they in the right seat? Right? You got the bus going. Do you have all the seats full, but are they in the right seat? And so for us, for our mom, and it was never a front desk, it was never a receptionist, it was never a secretary, director of first impressions. Because my mom, anyone that called that office or walked in that door saw her. Very few of them saw my brother and I. But she was the face of the organization. And so that is the most important hire we've ever had. Her and then the person that ended up replacing her when she retired was, you're the face of the organization, and you have to be the one that just naturally has a knack. Now, I'll tell you, we got lucky. The Lord blessed us. Because the lady that replaced my mom, so quick story, we had a lot of people move out of Michigan when they retire. So they wanted to go to Arizona. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful here, but it's brown. I really miss fall, and this was fall. So our person, just without any prompting, without any training, goes out, get a leaf, presses it together, puts it in between cardboard, writes in crayon, you know what, fall misses you too, but we love you anyways, and mails it to them. I mean, you just can't, that gives you a lot of time if the markets go down for people to stay with you. And the best example I have of that personally, I was talking to a guy who'd been a client for probably 10 or 15 years. And just sometimes, for whatever reason, you have people that no matter what you invest in, it just goes up, and other people, it just seems to not go up. It struggles. And he's like, boy, I wish you guys were jerks. I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, because I like talking to you, and I like the service, and it's first rate, and I love the events, and I love the company, but my portfolio's not doing that great. I'm like, well, I know that. I talk to you every 90 days. But it buys you time. It buys you time to hopefully turn things around. But they have that kind of relationship. So, and the last thing here is legacy. So we wanted to leave a legacy in our community. And this was more my brother than I. He was always like, don't wait until you're in your mid to late 50s when you've made it to give money away and to get involved. So we started immediately. Now, it was great for marketing as well. I mean, there's no question about that. But we gave scholarships away to students at the schools and everything else, but get involved and do that as part of the legacy, which is basically, part of that, the Warren Buffett ideology is, right, is you find someone that's very capable and competent and you just get out of their way. And that's what we tried to do. So now 30 years later, when we look at our legacy, what are the things we wanted to do? We wanted to build a company that was very relationship-oriented to our clients, and again, a very, very high retention rate. So I think so far, we've hit that, but you constantly have to be reviewing it. Number two is we wanted to provide things that a great environment for employees. Our culture was really off the charts. Number three is we wanted to do something that provided us a good living, which it did. Number four is we wanted to get involved in the community. And five, now I left the company. Where's my brother? Well, my brother lives in Lake Tahoe. He's not in Jackson. He built the company so he didn't have to be there. So our vision from 91, 92, 93, start the company in 94, was this is what we want to build. And we just keep reviewing what if, why not, yeah, constantly are doing that because everything's evolving. And along those lines, so Dorothy Vaughan, does anybody know Dorothy Vaughan? So have you ever seen Hidden Figures, for the NASA movie? Yes? It's a great movie about three ladies that were working in, it wasn't even called NASA back then, but it was like in the 50s, 60s-ish time frame is when they were talking about them. And there were three, one was a brilliant mathematician, one I think worked in law, but they were African-American females, so obviously they were female and they were African-American, so they had two things stacked against them back at that time frame. She ran a department called the Human Computers. So it was a whole group of ladies that would compute things, and she recognizes there was a computer they had just bought, which is an IBM 6400 or something. I don't know. It was as big as this room, literally, but no one really knew how to run it. She went to the library, and she got a book on how to do the programming for it and taught herself the programming language and the other people. So what she did is she found where things are trending. So in your business, where are things trending? Where are things going? She kept her job, became head of the whole department for her career because she saw where things were headed and put herself in position to be successful. So what if, why not, yeah, but. So you see BlackBerry, if any of you are old enough, you remember BlackBerry. They were the #1 mobile device operation in existence. They don't exist anymore, but Apple does. Yellow Pages, you talk to any high schooler, right? They're like, you did what? Yeah, we got a big book, and we looked through the book to find out where we needed to go. Oh, yeah, no, that's Google. How about Sears? So in '89, they said, you know what, we're going to do some online sales. By '93, they said, that's never going to work. And in '94, this company called Amazon started that said, how about if we did online sales and delivered by mail? So what if, why not, and yeah, but. So that's it. Retreat. Constantly get your company together and review things. Ask those 3 questions as you look at where you want things to go and how things are going so far. So we'll do Q&A in just a second. So as far as, it was interesting, I was talking to Teresa and Mary Lynn when I first got here. And I was going to do my testimony that led me from leaving my company to go teach. But I had something happen this week that I think is, again, a little bit more universal that I want to share. Because just like the what if, why, that's faith too. And you're never static. Sometimes you're really close to the Lord, and sometimes it's a struggle. And so I was having coffee with a lady earlier this week. And she says to me, and this is where the Lord was speaking through her, and she didn't even know it, to me. And she said, we were talking about all the different things going on in the world, and she happened to say something, well, I'm Christian, so I'm pro-life, but it's still my choice and my body. And not that I'm going to get into all of that, but I thought, well, no, it's sort of the Lord's choice and the Lord's body, really. So what the Lord was looking at me is like surrender. So that's what I want to talk about, is surrender. So it's something that I'm going through. I was mentioning when I was talking to some people earlier in our networking. So my company right now is a very disposable income company. So with inflation very high in the economy and just paralyzed, the example I use is I have a friend that pours cement for a living, and he says if it's raining, it's better than if there's a threat of rain. Because if there's a threat of rain, people are paralyzed and they don't make a decision about whether or not you want to pour the cement. But if it's raining, they'll make a decision. Well, with the economy and the election and all the things that are going on, I don't know if you find this, but I'm finding that people are pretty much paralyzed. It takes about 4 times as many contacts to get someone to actually call you back. And then most of them are like, yeah, maybe in like a year we'll do that. Maybe. We'll see. So anyways, my wife was like, hey, I know you're getting this thing off the ground for financial literacy, but can you get something going as far as consistent income? That'd be nice. And so I had a job all lined up to do something, and I was going to do mine, off to the side because I can do it in the evenings and so forth. And the job I had lined up was perfect. It checked every box. I was praying about it. I was fasting about it. I was like, all right, Lord, it's in your hands. But this, it just felt in my soul like, this is it. This is the one. And then I got to the final 2, and they picked the other person. I was like, oh, snap, really? And it was a gut punch. And so I said to the Lord, all right, I'm not finding anything here, so you have to bring me the next opportunity because it's just not working when I'm doing it. So obviously you want me to go somewhere. I just don't even know where. And I had a few other things that were sort of on the outskirts that could happen, and every one of those things fell through. And then totally out of the blue, about a week and a half ago, I get a call for a small little school to teach financial literacy at the school. And they're like, hey, we just lost our business teacher. Would you like to come and help us out for a year? and teach some marketing and, to middle school and high school kids and so forth. I was like, huh, okay, yeah, it appears that's where you need me to minister. So I guess my point is, even someone that's been, more established in their faith for the last 15 years, because mine happened in 2009, you're constantly getting tested, if you will, and you're constantly having to are you really in charge, Lord, or do I just put you in charge when I already know the outcome that I want? And that's hard, because my wife's like, hey, and I'm like, I'm waiting for him to tell me where I'm supposed to go. And so it's that trust and that surrender. And so that's, I guess, what I would leave you with is really look at your life and say, have I trusted, have I surrendered? And what does that look like, and how am I living it out right now? Because it's really, really challenging to do that. As I was telling Jeffrey when we were talking earlier, I said, I can play God better than anybody, right? I mean, I can be selfish and be like, oh yeah, this is exactly how I'm gonna control all this. And that's not the way we're supposed to do it. So, questions or thoughts or anything like that? Yes, sir.
One of the things that was attractive about this meeting this morning, my wife sent me an email. In that email, it said that GB has navigated squash dreams, decisions between settling for a guaranteed payoff versus not settling for but no guarantee. If there's no other questions, could you take a little time to speak on what that's referring to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that actually goes back to when I was in college. I was involved in music, so I played in the marching band at the University of Michigan, and I was a drummer. And so I had been going to the games since I was 7 years old. Now, obviously, I'm 18. I'm in the marching band. It's fantastic, and my instrument doesn't exist anymore, but it was the tri-toms, for those of you that are familiar with music, but now they'd have quads or quints or the multiple drums that you're carrying. And that was by far the one I was most talented on. And so what I learned, though, is that in the pregame, so you get to go in the tunnel, you're playing cadences in the tunnel at U of M, and the teams all come through and so forth and so on, and then, of course, you march onto the field, and band take the field. Tri-toms were not allowed to do that. It just was not tradition. You had snare drums, you had bass drums, and you had cymbals. That was it. I was like, oh, well, heck, I'm not doing that. I want to march out of the tunnel. And so my dream was squashed at that point in time. Now, to compound that, and this is a little bit more technical, I'm left-handed. And everything is written for a right-handed lead person. So I had to teach myself to play right-handed. And when you play tri-toms, you play what's called a match grip. So your hands are over like a rock drummer, right? At Michigan, they play traditional style on the snare drum, like jazz. So their left hand is turned this way. So not only did I have to play right-handed, I had to take my left hand and turn it the other way. So there was no guarantee of a payout. It took me 3 years of practice. Basically, my freshman year, I started practicing, my sophomore year, my junior year. And only the top 6 drummers get to be in the line, and then they have tryouts every week of who's that top 6. And it's usually just the last person and the 4 or 5 alternates, because they don't cut anybody in band. You go out for band, you're in band. And so the possibility of no payout is I'm going to spend 3 years not being on the field, where I could have been on the field. I could have went to every bowl game they went to. And I missed all that because I wasn't in the block, because I was an alternate snare drummer. But it's like, this is what I want to accomplish. And so in my senior year, I was 6th. So I made it, and then a couple weeks I missed it and lost the audition, and a couple weeks I made it. But I got to march at the Rose Bowl, but that was the squash dream. Potentially is the fact that I had a dream of what I wanted to do. It got squashed. I had to take 3 years of practice with no guarantee of a payout, which really parlays into business per se, right? My brother and I start a company. Is it going to work? I don't know. Can you guys get financing when you're a small company? We couldn't. We had no manufacturing equipment. We had to go to a friend and have him mortgage his house to give us the money to start. That's a little bit of pressure. It's like, hey, if this doesn't work out, do you got enough money to pay your house off? just in case. And he's like, oh, it's going to work out. And I'm like, well, I hope so. We're going to work awfully hard to get it to go. But that's how we started our company. And so it's just having that vision and being willing to put the work in, but you don't know if the payout's going to work out. And for me, it took 3 years in the band. And again, I still missed a couple of, like the Ohio State game my senior year, I wasn't out on the block, which was very disappointing. But I made it back in for the Rose Bowl, which was nice. So that's what that was. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned that you retreated often with your brother.
Yes.
Did you have a mechanism for getting feedback from your team members that helped you identify trends and ways you could better your company?
Yes. So what we would do is we would definitely get those types of things with just general meetings with the staff as a whole, where a lot of informal conversations, door open policy, and get all of the, because you lose track to some degree. Some of it's on purpose and intentional. Some of it's just because of the nature of growing, of what's happening in certain departments, like in the nitty gritty. And so we really empowered, again, our employees. So if you're running the new business department, and we only had one person in the new business department, one person in service, we had our director of first impressions, we had a marketing person, et cetera. And then those got a little bit more fine-tuned when we added a few other people. But we would go to you, and let's say you're running new business, we'd say, what's happening? It's your department. How can we make your department better? Tell us how to make it better. What's going on that's working and not working? And we expect you, in a very honest way, not just to, don't tell us what we want to hear. Tell us what we need to hear. What changes do we need to, is that technology we got working? And there were times that we got stuff that we just scrapped. It just didn't work. It's like, well, that was unfortunate, waste of money. And then what we would do is my brother and myself, and then we ended up with 2 other people on our leadership team, and we would go and we would take all of that information and then we would brainstorm around that. Then we come back to the team after we get out of the brainstorm. And again, it may be a day later, might be a week later, but we would do it wherever. So we were always big on taking the company on trips too. So let's say we go up to Mackinac Island. Well, one of the days we were on Mackinac, we'd spend 4 hours, 5 hours brainstorming, the leadership team. Like, hey, we're going to go do this. You got 3 other days to yourself, but these 4 hours, we're going to get together and just talk about what's happening in the company. And then we'd pull that all together with the team. But we really tried to let each department say, what do you need to be better? What technology do you need? How do you need to work with other departments better? And that's how we did ours. Any other questions or thoughts? All right. Well, thank you very much.